Greetings, welcome back to Old Ways Rising Farm YouTube channel for our third video on the making and throwing of aerodynamic hunting sticks. Okay, these are variously called non-returning boomerangs, rabbit sticks, Kylies, Carlies. There's a lot of different names, some more appropriate than others, but for what we're talking about here, aerodynamic stick, and I'm going to be using the term non-returning boomerang because it's the lone word that is most abundant in culture, but rabbit sticks and all of these others you'll hear used. This is very much serious, okay? The information on the physics, the science, the background, the history of these tools is in the first video. Wood selection and how to make a blank is in the second video. I'll put a link up at the top of the screen for the first video, and then the end screens will lead you through the series as you go. But these are the blanks that we made in video, and now we're going to go and tune them. So when we talk about tuning these, what we're doing is getting the thickness and the profile dialed in so that you can get your furthest flight. And we don't just want a distant flight, we want a particular flight. So we want these to spin and to be completely horizontal right across the ground until they completely run out of energy and then just drop. That way, the maximum amount of the energy that you put in with your arm is translated into flat flight right above the ground, right at the level where the rabbit or the bird or whatever you're throwing the stick at is located. Okay? To do that, we need to tune the airfoil, the profile. Two basic ways to do that. The first is by carving, and that's what I'm going to demonstrate on this, is carving focused tuning. And with that, you're making your stick over thickness, and these are a shy 3/4 inch, okay, about 5/8. So you have room to cut away material, and you will, with a rasp, cut the correct profile in. Test it, adjust, test it, adjust. The other way is by heating, either with steam or dry heat, depending on what your wood's amenable to, and bending the wood. Okay, so you can do that. You can either bend in a positive lift in the tip, okay, or you can bend propeller twist in the sidearm. You can do these things in combination. You can get as much as you can out of carving, and then at the last minute decide, oh, I need the steam bend to make a little bit more adjustment. And when you're using really, really dense hardwoods, those top tier hardwoods that we discussed in the previous video, you can get a really thin blade for maximum ballistic coefficient, discussed in the first video, and in doing so, a really, really thin piece, you have to bend. Okay? You can't get enough airfoil profile in order to have your maximum distance and enough lift for your maximum distance. So you have to bend. You have to put that propeller twist in it when you're cutting those really, really thin profiles. These two were cut out of a flat board, so I don't need the steam bend to adjust irregularities or woogities from the raw wood. And I have plenty of thickness, and I'm going to be leaving them relatively thick because these are black locust, a medium tier hardwood. Okay? I think I will be able to get all of the tuning I need just out of carving. The process is guess and check, right? You guess, you throw, you check, you guess again. But before we get into that, I want to show you what some wrong profiles look like. Okay? I have a couple of sticks here. One fully tuned ash stick, a bottom tier wood, but it still works, as evidenced by the fact that I'm holding one. A clobber knocker stick with no airfoil whatsoever, and just a flat, straight piece that's going to be a little bit of a demonstration of too much airfoil. So I step forward, you can see this is true plano convex. The bottom is a plane, the top is convex. Okay? This has too much lift, and the fact that it's straight is going to accentuate the impact of that. I want to show you what all of these look like. So with this first one, this will be a demonstration of the optimum gliding flight. This is what we want to look at, and I want you to see that first, right here at the beginning of the video. Okay? You see how it just kind of glides flat and rides across the surface of the ground. I'm throwing this light because that stick is capable of going into the woods and breaking itself on the trees. We don't want to do that. So that's a light throw, but you can see that hover and glide, even in a light throw. Now, the clobber knocker stick. This is just a clubby chunk of ironwood. No lift whatsoever. And we'll get some distance on it, but you're going to see a ballistic trajectory. So at the start of the throw, I'm going to throw it up at an elevated angle, and it's going to come down. So you'll see an arcing flight with this. Okay? Ballistic trajectory. We don't want a ballistic trajectory. We want the gliding flight. So we put the airfoil in. The problem is you have to get just the right airfoil. If you have not enough, you will maintain a ballistic trajectory. Better, more glidey than the knobby clobber knocker, but not as good as the true tuned stick. If you get too much, it will flutter, catch the wind sideways, stall and drop. This is deliberately carved to have too much airfoil. And if I throw this, you will see the flutter of a terrible throw stick. Okay? I'm going to grab that and show that again. Okay? A second demonstration of fatal flutter. Right?
It sounds different too.
Sounds different. Yeah, it's ugly. And neither of those flights got even as far as the knobby club, even though it does have a bit of an airfoil on it. Now, I'm going to go and I'm going to reprofile that a little bit, take the airfoil off, and compare that throw. 5 minutes of draw knife whittling, and you can see I've completely changed the profile of this. So now we have an even, this is called a lenticular profile, lens-shaped, curved on the top and curved on the bottom. Okay. Now, if I go ahead and throw this, it's still going to have a little bit of wiggle wobble because it's flat. It doesn't have the balancing effect of being a curved stick. So we're going to get a little bit of a bull roarer effect, but not nearly as bad. And it's a better flight, but we're back to a simple ballistic trajectory. So this is just to illustrate this concept. We're not going to tune that stick. That's just a junk piece of firewood. But I'm not going to abuse an actual boomerang blank in that way. Okay. So the straight stick kind of gets the point across. What we do want to do is look at the two sticks that we have made and see where they fall. This is the first one I made, and this is the one that I made on camera. Okay. So if I throw this first one and we look at its flight, okay, it has a nice flat straight flight, but it's a little bit of a ballistic trajectory. So that needs more lift. The second one, the one that we made on camera, if I give it a chuck, it flies relatively straight for a little while, okay? And then just as it starts to lose velocity and that torque vector picks the wing up, it gains lift too fast and it flutters and spins out. So that needs less lift, okay? Let's go do our first stage of tuning. I'll show you how we adjust that. Now, this is going to go right back where it belongs, here in the firewood pile. I just pulled a straight stick. Having it straight accentuates the flutter a little bit artificially. It's a little contrived, I recognize that. But I do recommend, just like in the last video I recommended you make some plywood models to practice your throwing technique, go find a stick, split it in half, and throw it and see what flutter looks like. Educate your eye. It will help you see what's going on with these things. Okay? Just like I did here. Get a stick, throw it, see your ballistic trajectory. Get a flutter stick, throw it, see what flutter looks like, and now you know to avoid those two things. Okay? And please do get a good throwing arm and master the throwing technique before you try to tune your boomerang. The tune is as much tuned to your throwing style and strength as it is anything else. Okay? Lift is dependent on the shape of the tool, also on airspeed, so wind will mess with it. But because it's dependent on airspeed, your throwing velocity will change the tune. Okay? And the fluting will change it as well in the very last step of this. Okay? Keep all those things in mind. So don't try to tune your very precious boomerang stick if these are hard for you to come by. Don't try to tune it until you have a consistent throwing style. Okay? Do tune one of your plywood blanks before you tune your good one. Okay? So remember from video 2, those 3 or 4 plywood blanks you made to practice throwing? I want you to tune one of those first. Okay? Get used to the idea. Now, off in the firewood pile that goes. We're never going to look at it again. We have our 2 boomerangs. This one, my left, your right, is the one with not enough lift. This one, my right, your left, is the one with too much lift. Okay? So, these are too thick. We want to thin out. That's very important, and that's going to be part of the tuning. But I made these profiles there in the second video to be sort of close-ish to where I think they're going to end up, so that we can intelligently thin this out. When I reshape the profile, I can do it just by filing on the bottom or the top bevel. But I lose width. I like the width that these have. Okay? And these came out of fairly thin stock, so I didn't have a whole lot of extra width to mess with. They kind of needed to be what they are to get the basic, balance that we've already talked about in the previous videos. Okay? So, I need to take out thickness. How do I take out thickness in a way that helps my tuning? Well, the more lenticular this is, the less lift. The closer we get to true plano convex, the more lift. So on this one, which is not enough lift, I'm going to flip it upside down, and I'm going to take weight out of the middle. Okay? Your best tool for this is Mr. Rasp. Find an arrangement of some sticks or logs to the side of a tree that you can really prop that up against well. And I'm going to need another block in there, squiggling a little on me. Okay? So you kind of dig the nose in and lean into it a little bit. That's your clamp. And then you can get both hands on thinning it out. Okay? So to add lift, I want to take the belly out of this bottom, but I don't want to take weight mass off of the top. So I'm not going to film all of this. I'm going to keep going there. And then when I get to the tip, I'm going to file some off here. So that I'm picking the tip up. Okay? And again, these are either left or right-handed. They're thrown with the tip pointing forward in that attitude, right? So the more I lift this tip up, the more lift it gets as the tip is penetrating new air. Okay? So that's what I'm going to do on this one. This one has too much lift. So it's a little too close to a true plano convex profile. So I'm going to do the opposite. I'm going to take my mass out of the top. Okay? And we'll file a bunch of mass off of the top like that. Now, what I'm going to do, one of the things I really like about using the Shinto rasp for this is it has 2 coarsenesses of teeth. The whole piece was worked down and smoothed with the fine tooth, so I can keep track based on the scratch pattern of what I've touched. So as I'm doing this, I'm not going to go to finished thickness right away. I'm going to take a consistent layer with that coarse tooth pattern and then flip it over and file those out. Okay? That way I can keep track of what I've done and what I haven't. When I've taken one full layer off the top of this one and one full layer off the bottom of this one and done that work on the tip, we'll go and we'll throw them again, and I'll meet you back over there in the yard to do it. So I took about a 1/16 of an inch or so. Sorry for the imperial units, it's the calipers that I have. Off of each of these, and something interesting happened. Now remember I was saying back there that your airspeed has a huge impact on the lift, okay? Both of these came out with too much lift and quite a bit of flutter problem because of it, okay? That one particular, that's the one that had too much lift before. So, what do we need to do? Well, now we've got to start working the edge. So, instead of just taking down the top, okay, like I did previously, now I need to reshape the edge so that it comes more to a lenticular form. These sticks are telling me that they're going to require more of a lenticular form. So in order to do that, I'm going to have to work directly on the edge. Again, leading edge. So on the leading edge, I'm going to work on the bottom and file it up. Okay? Trailing edge I'm going to leave alone. This is the other leading edge. I'm going to need to file it up. And I'm going to have to work a little bit more off the top of both of them. Okay? So again, same thing here. This is how it's thrown. So that's leading edge. I'll file on the bottom to bring that edge up toward the top face. Same here. I'll file on the bottom to bring it up toward the top face. And I'll sand or use the fine edge of the file a little bit evenly on both surfaces to bring down that surface a bit more symmetrically. This is a fairly common problem on sticks that don't have a lot of curve. This is curved enough to give me the balance point that I need, but it's still relatively straight, okay? So we have to respect that. Okay, so these have been a pain in the neck. I reformed this edge so that it would be pretty much perfectly lenticular, okay? And I had some footage that I lost that I honestly can't find. I think it got accidentally deleted of that process. But these are now truly lenticular all the way along. So they have no lifting airfoil in them. When I was throwing them this way, they were still losing stability. I tried something, and you'll find this works sometimes. When your stick is just not cooperating whatsoever, try throwing it the opposite direction. And when I did this, it actually worked. So I kind of recut a little bit of a handle here in the nose end and got a stable flight out of it. Okay? Now, it's not a great long distance stick because I just took all the airfoil out of it. So it is an aerodynamic stick. It has enough curve to be stable, but it's never going to be a 50+ meter stick.
But that's not always necessary.
Not always necessary, absolutely. You know, if you were using these for hunting here in the Northeast or Eastern North America, the Eastern Woodlands, right? I mean, in an open field like I'm standing in, yes, long range could be an advantage. But if you're hunting up there in the brush where the rabbits actually live, you're not going to throw 100 meters anyway, right? So that can still be a useful hunting tool. Also, you know, I've noticed before in some others that I've tinkered with that if you have a woogity end, putting the woogity end forward is more stable than the woogity end backwards. I don't know why. If you're an aeronautics engineer, again, I'm not. I'm an ethnobotanist playing with these technologies. But if you're an aerospace engineer and you can explain why that's more stable, please chime into the message box and let me know. I would love to learn more about the tuning of these sticks and about this really fascinating technology. So I'll give the second one a throw. See, it is stable, it just isn't long distance. And with that, we're going to call this particular half of the project finished. And we're going to get on with the natural crook. So those first two sticks, meh. You saw the difficulty that we had in getting them tuned. Honestly, I have some regrets. I was debating whether or not to use those boards for that project, knowing the shape was a little bit marginal, versus taking them and using them for some other woodworking project because there was some really nice figure in the wood, right? I wanted to show making boomerangs from a board like that for this video series. Just come grab them, honey. Just come grab the little kitty. I wanted to show making them from the board, so I decided to go forth and try it. But, yeah, I do have some regrets. I'm going to leave it in. I think that seeing a project which doesn't go perfectly, doesn't go exactly to plan, exactly the way you wanted, is instructive. Because when you're new to this, when you're learning how to do it, when you're choosing your first crooks, it's going to take some time feeling your way around, figuring out what shapes work really well and really simply and what shapes don't. But now we're going to tune. we have cat interference problems here. Now we're going to take and we're going to tune this one, the second blank that I made in the previous video. You're going to see a marked difference because of the more exaggerated bend. Okay? So this is just the finished blank, not yet tuned, it's been shaped to the approximate shape to my eye, contours, positions, thicknesses, okay? But it's not really tuned at all. Here in this thickest portion, it's almost an inch thick. This limb is hovering around a ½ inch thick, and that's just about where I want it. This limb is a little over a ½ inch here and kind of tapers up to 3/4. So we need to do a lot of tuning there. The wingtips have a little bit more drop in the tips than I would prefer, but it seems to be doing okay for now. And we've got to take this bulbous middle out. But before I do that, I'm going to give this a couple of throws so you can see how it works just from a crudely shaped blank. Nice glide on that one. I'm going to grab it and throw it again. Throw two. Kind of flubbed it a little bit. Throw three. That one wanted to soar a little bit. So you can see how much nicer that worked right off the get-go than the previous examples. The difference is the more exaggerated bend. Okay, so it's already got good balance. It's got good rotation. Criticisms. One is it throws very nicely on a perfect throw, but with even a little bit, and I've thrown this a few times more than just these three, if you have it like in that third throw where the front tip is canted up, even a little bit, even a little imperfection from straight, it wants to soar up, okay? So that means that we have a little bit too much drop in the ends. But I have this big thick goober in the middle, and what I can do is I can take material off of the bottom in thinning that out, and that will effectively change the overall geometry to a more flat profile, okay? So that's going to be my first tune in terms of major material removal. My other criticism is it's just a little too slow. It doesn't get out there with the speed that I want. So that's a function of thinning down the limbs a bit, especially on this one. But again, I want to flatten it some, so I'm going to take material preferentially from the bottom. And as we sand it, as we get it more even, it will also pick up speed. The third thing I'm going to do in this round of tuning is to round off the tips. So these bluntnesses are creating a lot of drag, and that's slowing it down. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to leave this limb alone. I'm going to leave this tip almost as thick as it is. And I'm going to take material off the bottom from about my finger here out through about here. Thin that out and round off the tips. Then I'll come back out and we'll do some more throws. We took down the ends, we rounded them off, took quite a lot of meat out of the bottom of this wing here, this forward wing. You can see that most of this divot that split out in that splitting process is gone. This wing across the bottom is pretty much globally flat. This one is globally flat. There's still a bend right here. I can't carve all of that out for a couple of reasons. This wing, the trailing wing where I carved this Hopi style handle that I always like to carve in my sticks, this is the thickness I want it. Even there at the thickest, it's just a little strong of a 1/2 inch. Okay. This is 3/4 inch there, 5/8 there, 1/2 inch there. So this is where I want it at the tip. I need to take a little bit more out here. I can't really take more out here without making this sway problem worse. And I'm starting to get a little bit of a hingy area here. That if I keep carving on the bottom, I'm going to weaken the trailing wing. Okay. I rounded that off a little too. Now, all of these alterations have made a big impact. So if I take this and we'll do a throw or two here. I had to move the camera back because I'm getting a lot more range out of it. Okay. You see, I've moved the camera 30, 40 feet further back, and that's right about where it landed on the first throw. Now, I have started to have more veering problems. That was a really good throw. It didn't show up in that one. But it is starting to get a little bit more prone to wanting to lift up and veer. So I'm going to have to be careful of that. I'm going to go get... Even though it didn't show up in that throw, it is starting to rise and veer a little bit more. I need to thin this limb down to get it to that 1/2 inch thick profile that I'm really shooting for. I'm not going to touch this knob. I'm just going to, and I have to thin this from the top at this point. We'll see what impact that has. I have to do it. If it could make it a little, I'm not sure if it will make rising and veering better or worse. It could kind of go either way. It will sort of accentuate that up tip curve a little bit, but at the same time it's going to lessen the airfoil because I'm going to make it more shallow. Okay, those may just cancel out. It may help the veering, it may hurt the veering. I'm just going to have to see. But attacking this thickness is my next spot. The other thing that's happened on this one, and I've had this happen on others before, it's not the end of the world, but it is something to be very, very careful of, is it's probably not going to show up, but there's a hairline check, longitudinal check coming in here. Okay? It goes from about here to here on this face, and between my two fingers on the top. That's on the trailing limb. I have to be very careful about that. If that splits all the way out while I'm still working it, that would be catastrophic. If it just stays right where it is, and that's developed from clamping. I heard it pop last time I clamped this down to really bear down on the rasp. So that's a process error. So I'm not going to clamp on this limb anymore, at least not on the round side. I will clamp it down flat like that. But as long as it doesn't move any from where it is, it won't be a problem because I can just take some water-thin super glue and run it along that, and it will seal that crack right back up, and it will be just as strong as if it never happened. Is that fully traditional? Of course not. Am I going to do it? Oh, heck yes. Right? This is 2024, and I have super glue in on my workbench. So I'm going to use it and make sure that this stick stays nice. Okay? Now, even if I didn't do that, this would still be a stick worth finishing because it's flying so very well, and it would still last a long time even with that crack. Because the only reason that's being a problem, I think it started when I was splitting it and had difficulty with splitting this piece out. And it's gotten worse with the clamping. Okay? If this was done just by holding it you know, against a piece of wood and rasping that way, it would not have grown, and it would last for a very long time because the force in impact is in this direction, okay, against the grain, not trying to curl it backwards with the grain, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and thin this down, and then we'll go for a couple more throws. So we have shaved that section down. It is now a little strong of a 1/2 inch there, 5/8. About, yeah, it's about 5/8 all the way across, okay? I don't want to shave it down more than that, because I think I'm going to make the soaring problem worse if I do. It did get a little bit worse after this. I'll show you a throw here in a second. There are still things you can do, but let me show you the impact that this had. So, and it doesn't do it. That was a perfect throw. So yeah, that was about 130, 140 feet, just by pacing. That's not exactly, it's not exact, but right by pacing, about 130, 140 feet. So that's pretty good. Let me give it another throw. Part of what's going on is the wind is directly to my back at the moment, and that's helping it stay flat. A side wind picks it up and accentuates the veering behavior. But there, that's right. That's soaring and veering. Okay, good. That's what I wanted to show. Be right back.
Lots of walking with this hobby.
Okay. So that's soaring and veering. If you look at this wing in the flight direction, which is to my left, your right, okay, this away, soaring means too much lift, okay? To eliminate soaring, or to moderate soaring, you carve the bottom of the leading edge, okay? To eliminate veering, you carve the bottom of the trailing edge, okay? So this right now is a true plano convex surface. What I'm going to do to it is I'm going to carve a little bit out of both of these corners on the leading edge. This will just take a minute. And you don't need to clamp it in a vise for this for sure. We're just making small alterations. Trying to get all this done in a day for YouTube, so I'm cheating some relative to just a true bushcraft in the woods project here. The other thing that's being a bit of a problem today is a stiff swirling wind. So it makes it a little hard to compare two throws to each other because the wind keeps shifting on it.
So ideal conditions would be on a still day.
Oh, dead still is the best day to
That makes sense.
tune. But you know what? We have work schedules, and I need this for next week's video, and so we're doing it. Life be lifey. Okay, so not sure how well this is going to pick up, but if I get real close here, you can probably see some of that dome that I just put into it versus this one, which is dead flat. So this didn't take a whole lot of time, and when we get to this stage, very, very small changes and test it. Okay, so there was our very, very small change. Now, soared a little bit, but it didn't veer. You see, that made an impact. Second throw, same set of alterations. That was about perfect. I'm actually happy there. The next thing, that is about as much as I'm going to get just in sheer rough shaping. Okay? It's still not quite as much velocity as I would prefer, but it's very, very rough. Right? This is a really coarse rasp. Okay? So it's very rough. There's a lot of friction on the surface. I need to get it sanded, and I need to get it fluted. Okay? The fluting process is cutting those grooves on the top, which cause turbulence in the top of the wing. Again, refer back to the first video in this series where I talk about all of that physics. Okay? When we do that, it's going to pick up airspeed. As it picks up airspeed, it's going to pick up lift. And it's very likely we will have to make some additional small modifications to the bottom of the wing at that point. Okay? So when I make these, I've discovered that it's best to leave them a little bit under-tuned before you do the fluting. Do your fluting. Once you're sure that the very top of the wing is right where you want it to be, sand it. Now sand it to 220 grit here. I'm going to do that off camera. You don't want to sit and watch me sand for hours. I'll sand it, and then we'll sit down at the bench and talk about the fluting process. Then we'll come back out for more throwing. There you go. The basics of tuning, two different styles, two very different scenarios. Those serpentine sticks being one of the more difficult tuning challenges that I've had, and honestly, I'm not in love with the results, right? But at the same time, it's good pedagogy to leave both of these in. And then this one was one of the easiest tune jobs that I've had, and it has marvelous results. So both are here. You can see kind of the two extremes in this video. Take a note from this. So much of the outcome of your project when you're making one of these is almost predetermined when you pick your stock. Okay? You cannot take a stick and force it to be something that it doesn't want to be, right? You're working with your material. You can't just force it into conformity. This isn't cabinet making where any shape of log within reason can be cut, planed, squared, reduced, dovetailed, and forced to become any shape you want, right? When you pick your crook, when you pick your stock, there's a lot that's predetermined in terms of what's here, both with the shape and with the density of the material. Okay. Now, those first two serpentine sticks, I'm kind of done with them, right? They're kind of dead to me. We're not going to mess with them anymore. But this one, we're going to, in the next video, take and flute. And this fluting gives you reduced drag because it causes turbulence across the surface, very much like the dimples on a golf ball. Okay. It gives you increased distance, increased wing speed, increased velocity. It is a big benefit to flute one of these boomerangs. So, tag along in the next video, I'll show you how to do this. But before we part company, I just want to remind everybody that if you're interested in the history of these and getting all of the different forms and shapes and styles that have been made throughout history in your mind, go on to our Patreon site and check out the resources there, the compilation of historic sources on boomerangs. I think you'll like it. So, I'll see you there, see you here, and I'll see you next time for fluting on Old Ways Rising Farm.